How's it going, guys? Welcome to today's video. In this video I'm going to talk a little bit about milking frequency and particularly 10 and 7 milking. So what is 10 and 7 milking? What are some of the pros and cons? And what are some of the alternatives? In the previous video I mentioned that we started doing 10 and 7 milking this year, about half for the second half of the lactation. So what is 10 and 7 milking? It is 10 milkings in 7 days. Traditionally, most commonly you would see, especially on grassland farms, is a twice a day milking system. It doesn't have to be evenly spaced apart. A lot of research would show that you can actually pull two of the milkings very close together in order to improve your work-life balance of everyone on the farm and have no real impact on milk yield. So for example, rather than milking evenly spaced out every 12 hours, you could milk at a milking interval of say up to 16/8. So 16 hours between your evening milking and your morning milking, and then only 8 hours between your morning milking and your evening milking. Meaning you could milk at 7 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And this just helps to improve work-life balance for those on the farm and really doesn't impact on milking yield. So 3 times a day, twice a day and once a day is what we would consider regular milking frequency. It's consistent, same time every day. This is where it's not the same time every day. The most common of these is 3 and 2. This is where you do 3 milkings in 2 days. So essentially you would do 2 milkings on one day and only 1 milking on the next day. 10 and 7 is very similar to 3 and 2. Monday, Wednesday and Friday are twice a day milking. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday and Sunday are once a day milking. Research that was done last year in Chagas Moor Park saw that cows that were switched halfway through the lactation from a twice a day into 10 and 7 had no real drop in production versus cows that were milked twice a day for the full lactation. However, cows that were on 10 and 7 for the full lactation had about 11% less kilos of milk solids over the course of the year. And this is because when the cows tend to peak high earlier in the lactation and then slowly drop off. So you essentially start to do less milkings when the cows have less milk. I felt it would be a good year to experiment with this given the milk price was very low. So if there was a drop in milk, it wouldn't hit us as hard as a good milk price year. Also, costs are very high, so the ability to cut out costs out of the system was really going to be a benefit. So there was really no better year to try it out. On a Monday, Wednesday and Friday, we milk at 6 o'clock in the morning and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So this is our normal time that we would milk in twice a day earlier in the year. Then for the once a day, we decided to milk at 9 o'clock on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Then at the weekend, we didn't want to have the cows going to a full 24 hours with the once a day milkings back to back. So we altered it slightly, milking at 10 o'clock on Saturday and 8 o'clock on Sunday. I will include these in the description below so you can have a look at them after. Work-life balance. Because we're spending less time in the parlour, it opens up more time for us to do other jobs on the farm or give us more free time off the farm, particularly at the weekend. We usually try and front load our work during the week so that we don't have to do as much during the weekend, only really need to do the bare minimum. When there's only 1 milking to do, it's very easy. Come in the morning, do what jobs need to be done, and then you have the rest of the day off. The next benefit is reducing costs. Obviously there's the electricity costs of running the milking parlour for the duration of the milking, costs of heating water to clean the parlour afterwards, and also the costs of cooling the milk. There is less detergents and acid descales being used, so you save on these chemicals. Obviously if you're doing less milkings, you don't have to change your liners in your milking parlour as often. If you're doing it for half the year, that's 28% of the milkings for 6 months of the year that you're taking out. It's 4 milkings you've taken from the week. That works out at about 14% of the milkings in the year. Less milkings means less parlour washings to be spread. Cows are doing less walking because they're not coming into the parlour for as many milkings, which means reduced lameness and increased body condition score. So on the milk production, your litres actually do drop. You're milking the cows less often, so you get less litres. But your solids increase, your fat and protein do go up. And what we have found is, although the litres have dropped, the increase in the percentages of fat and protein has meant that we have done the same kilos of milk solids. Last year, for the month of August, we produced 50 kilos of milk solids per cow for the full month. That was on twice a day last year. This year was 10-7, and we produced 51 kilos of milk solids per cow for the month. We also noticed that in September, now it's harder to work out the kilos of milk solids per cows in September because this is usually the time we get rid of the empty cows after scanning. But we did notice from our milk statements that we had produced 10,000 less litres in this year when we were doing 10-7 versus last year. But we had produced 300 extra kilos of milk solids. So despite litres being down, we actually produced more. Now, one thing is very important here. Some of you might be thinking, but litres are falling, how are you producing more? It's important to remember what we are selling. In Ireland, we are paid A plus B minus C system. Now, not all farms are like this. There will be a small number of farms, so maybe on a liquid milk contract. But for most farms, we are paid A plus B minus C, which is your fat plus your protein minus your volume. So there's a fixed charge for every litre you supply. And essentially, this is charging you for the water in the milk that the processor has to deal with. That's no benefit to them, because it's the fat and the protein that's going to be used to make the cheese, the butter, and all the other dairy products. Now, in Ireland, we often talk about our milk price in cents per litre. This can be a little bit misleading because you're not actually being paid for your litres, you're being paid for your kilos of milk solid. When you're looking at the milk yields of the cows, you should look at the kilos of solids, milk solids that the cows are producing. I'll include a calculation in the description of the video of how to calculate your kilos of milk solids. One thing we were really noticing is this is a very important calculation to do, because when we saw the litres dropping in the tank, you might get worried that this 10-7 isn't working, we're losing production. But when you get the text message to tell you what your fat and protein was, you saw that they had increased. Doing the calculation, we could see that we were actually still producing the same kilos of milk solids on less litres, which means we were getting higher value for our milk. Now, most farmers will be aware of this, but some won't be. And it's understandable because you're never really told, it's not on any of your milk statements, but it's an important thing to get your head around of what you're actually being paid for. The biggest one I see is cell count. Typically, when you decrease the amount of times you're milking, you will see an increase in somatic cell count. We did see this on our farm this year. So it is one suggestion that if you were considering switching to 10-7, you need to have your cell count in a good position and mass size under control in your farm. If there is a bit of a problem there, you need to address this first before you can consider switching over. Our cell count was around 60,000 before we switched, and really dropped below 100 once we had switched. Now, there's probably some areas for improvement for us next year where we can manage to keep it down lower, but I would definitely recommend your cell count would probably want to be under 120,000 consistently before you go and switch to 10-7. On the changeover, is it maybe worth doing a milk recording around this time? So maybe just before you switch over or 10 days after you have changed, might be worth doing a milk recording. Next year, I think I'll do one 10 days after we change over, just to try and identify some of those high cell count cows and get on top of that cell count straight away. As I said, we switched halfway through the year, so in July, once breeding season had finished, we then switched to the 10-7. The important thing when you switch over is you want to do everything up. You want to essentially drive on milk in the cows in every aspect except for how often you are milking them, so that they don't actually drop in production. Because one thing we found was initially when you changed over, they did drop in production, and then after about a week they had climbed back up and settled down. This is to be expected, but I think managing this changeover well can reduce that drop and make sure that they continue to milk quite well. You need to notify where you supply your milk to. for the collections, because if you're going to change your milking times, it's important that they know when they can pick up the milk if they are not able to pick up milk from your farm while you're milking. When we went to change, I hadn't actually notified the who collects the milk on time, so then I ended up holding off for a couple of days before we changed over to make sure that they could change their milk collection so it suited them before we made the switch over. This meant that we actually started our first once-a-day milking on a Thursday, and with hindsight this wasn't ideal, because it meant that they had one once-a-day milking on that Thursday, and then they went into the weekend where they had a once-a-day milking back-to-back Saturday, Sunday. I think it would be more beneficial to start actually on a Sunday. So do one milking on a Sunday. That means you'll get a full week of 3 and 2 before the cows get to the weekend where they have the 2 once-a-days back-to-back. You want to have everything else going right for the cows. Don't have any pressure on them. Make sure you drive them on the grass, lots of nice leafy grass for them. Maybe even consider upping the meal by 1 or 2 kilos for a week or 10 days when you switch over, and then dropping it back to where you are. Some people also ask, do I change the feeding from day to day? They get the same amount every day. Generally, I don't really. I just leave it standard so they get the same amount at every milking. The main thing is just trying to keep it simple. The 10-7 milking won't suit every farm. The main thing, I think, is that your cell count is under control. But it's important to look at your system, look at how you're being paid for your milk, and looking for areas of improvement. For us, it's a no-brainer. 10-7 is working. We're doing the same kilos of milk solids per cow, and we've improved our work-life balance, and we've cut costs out of the system. At the end of the day, it's all about cost control. This is going to increase your margin. So it's better for our lifestyle, it's better for our pocket, it's better for the cows, and it's better for the environment because you're using less energy. So I definitely think it's worth a go if you think it's going to suit your farm. It was just for the second half of the year. First half of the year, we're still going to be milking twice a day as normal. Hope you enjoyed today's video. I know there wasn't really many action shots or anything in it, but just answering some of the questions that he had on the 10-7 milking. Also, you might notice I have a mustache. I'm doing Movember, which spreads awareness and raises funds for men's health. The link's in the description, so make sure to click it and donate if you can. Thanks very much for watching, guys. See you in the next one.